Hi, I'm Malika Bilal.
I'm Dan Ming, and this is Naomi Bottrell, a British Sign Language interpreter. Disability advocates in the United Kingdom believe the rights of the disabled are under threat.
So what are they doing to make their voices heard? That's today on The Stream. On June 8th, voters in Britain will head to the polls to cast their ballots in a general election.
Organizers of the Crypt the Vote UK campaign say there's a lot at stake. They're hoping to harness the power of the 13 million disabled people living in the UK to ensure their rights are protected. Advocates say years of government cuts have left the disabled community vulnerable. In 2016, a United Nations study found welfare reforms in the UK led to, quote, grave and systematic violations of disabled people's rights. Now, we should mention that the British government has strongly disagreed with those findings.
So, with less than 3 weeks until the election, does the disabled community have the collective electoral power to bring change? Well, joining us to discuss that from London, we have Eleanor Lisney. She's a disability rights advocate and co-founder of Crypt the Vote UK. Also in London, James Moore. He's the deputy business editor and a columnist for The Independent. In Manchester, Rick Burgess is a disability rights activist. And in Southampton, Francis Davis. He's an advisor in the Office of Disability Issues. Welcome to The Stream, everyone. Rick, I want to start with you. We're hurtling towards June 8th and this election. So as it comes closer, what's the biggest issue on your mind that you'll be voting for come June 8th?
The restoration of the rights that have been taken from us over the last 7 years by the government.
Rights like what?
The right to independent living, the right to inclusion in society, the right to a reasonable standard of living, a right not to live in fear of the benefit system and the assessment system, the right not to be a victim of hate crime, which has risen massively under the last 7 years, and the rights given to us under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, which, as you said in the intro, the UN has found there's been grave or systemic abuses of our rights by this government. And in response to that, the government has simply ignored the United Nations.
So you mentioned the assessment system. Eleanor, for our international audience who may not be aware, how would you describe the assessment system?
The assessment system, I've been through them myself, is it can be quite dependent on where you live, and some people have reasonable experience, and some people have really horrendous experience where they were not believed, where the assessors had actually given lies about what they can do and what they can't do, and a great number of people have been to tribunals and have those assessments overturned and given their benefits back. But the trouble is that takes time, and that creates a lot of mental health issues and distress to the people who have been denied their benefits, even if it's just for a few months while they get it back. Some people don't, of course, some people don't get it at all. And there have been suicides that have been a result of these unfair assessments.
So
can I
go ahead? Yeah, please do, James.
If you look at what Eleanor was saying about the appeals, some 60-something%, approaching 66% of the appeals are being upheld. Now, you have to raise a question about an assessment system which is getting decisions so wrong that nearly 2 in every 3 decisions is overturned on appeal. There's something clearly going wrong there, and the government does seem to have a problem with acknowledging that.
So talking about how people are assessed in terms of what disability compensation they're going to get, we got a video comment from a person named Candace Pearson. And Francis, I'd like to get you to respond to it. So listen to this video comment from Candace in the UK.
My partner has severely arthritic knees because of an industrial accident he had in the past. recently at his PIP assessment, the assessor saw him pick up a towel from the floor from a seated position, which, as you can imagine, doesn't require any leg movement. You just bend down and pick it up. For that reason, they gave him 0 points for mobility. They took £1,100 a month from him. They took his mobility car, which is only for benefit recipients. He's now caring for 2 people on no benefits at all. It's absolutely disgusting. Please vote.
So, Francis, you're advising the UK's Office for Disability Affairs. Have you heard these kind of stories, and how should the government respond to them?
Well, I think it's fair to say that a previous Secretary of State, after the Secretary of State that introduced some of these changes, said that the work capability assessment that wasn't working as well as it should be, and it needed to be improved, and there are continuous attempts to improve. It's a massive system with hundreds of thousands of people going through it, so it's likely that some assessments are going to be wrong, and I think it's a good thing that people appeal and then those appeals get upheld, because that shows that advocacy and individual support works to make sure that the right judgments are made in the end.
But
do you not think there's a
of
problem?
Of the appeals, just last week we discovered that the government ministry that is administering appeals have been instructed to deny 80% of the appeals, not on the merit of the case, but simply reject them out of hand. 80%.
I'm not aware of that figure or have seen that reported anywhere. I mean, I've sat in on those appeals. I've been subject to those appeals myself. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but I've sat in on some of those appeals.
Response from the DWP, they themselves made this response. So if you're saying it's not true, it's the DWP lying about their own statistics. It came out last week. I can send it.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you send that through to me, I'll be very happy to look at it. I think, you know, the Department of Work and Pensions we're talking about spends 6% of government income on disabled people, and that's not the only spend on disabled people across all of the government departments that we have in the UK. And I think one of the things that we need to be careful to think about here is it's not just about Department of Work and Pensions, it's about social care, which is provided by our local government. It's about the huge amount of money we invest through the National Health Service, which is provided through the Department of Health and NHS, National Health Service England. There's a whole package of things going on and thousands of transactions every day. And if some of those transactions go wrong, that's not good enough. They need to be put right. Advocacy such as the Vote campaign can help do that, and I really welcome it.
So
Francis,
I hear what you're saying, and Rick, I hear your point you're making. I do want to point our attention to this statement from the Department for Work and Pensions, who declined to be on this show, but sent us this, saying the decision on whether someone is well enough to work is taken following a thorough independent assessment, including all available evidence provided from the claimant's GP or medical specialist. Anyone who disagrees with the outcome of their assessment can appeal.
But those appeals are at a court. I mean, those appeals you find. If a lot of people who've been through the appeal process have talked to me about feeling criminalised because they have to go for a court. It's a very stressful things to go to, and if you look at the figures at the sheer level of appeals that are going through, it says that something's wrong. And the problem I'm having, and I'm not hearing this from Francis, is if you're getting that level of appeals being upheld, you clearly have a problem. And the government doesn't appear willing to recognise it, because all it does is say, look at this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. It won't actually look at the figures and say, OK, clearly we've got something going wrong here, we need to look at this again. It just won't admit there's a problem. And its stock response is just deny, 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 like the classic defence lawyer response. And the problem is it's causing people a lot of pain.
Well, let's give Francis a chance to respond to that. Francis, go ahead.
So firstly, these tests weren't introduced by the current government. They were introduced by the Labour government before. So they've been around and they've been through a process of evolution. I think secondly, Stephen Crabb, when he was Secretary of State, said that they weren't working. And then then the new Secretary of State came in.
Disabled people shouldn't be a guinea pig for a testing regime which doesn't work and hasn't worked for 9 years. We shouldn't be guinea pigs for something that doesn't work.
Neither should Neither should independence or their rights be completely reduced to how much money they can get off the government. The important thing here is a whole package of support so that people can have access to employers that make reasonable adjustments. That's not the job of the government. It is the job of the government to challenge them. It's the duty of local authorities to provide the right wraparound care. We can't any longer simply say that independence is secured only by how much money government hands to you. Because that doesn't, in the end, generate real independence, because it doesn't necessarily give people on the range of addition.
So, Francis, one thing we're getting a lot of comments about is the issue of mental health as a disability, and I wanted to ask James about that. So we have this tweet here from Zagba. She said, "It's more difficult to successfully apply for benefits if you have a mental health disability. Few assessors are mental health trained. Most are general nursing staff and physiotherapists. Hidden impairments are naturally harder to prove." So, James, have you heard about this? How does someone with what might be a hidden impairment, like a mental health issue, go through this assessment?
They're going to have a lot of difficulties, unfortunately. I mean, a little while ago, one of the tribunals said to the government, "Look, we have a problem here. This isn't working. You need to sort this out." And what the government simply did was change the rules to knock a whole load of people out. And can I just actually, while I'm on, mention to Francis said it's not about what the government's giving you. It's about getting people into work. Well, the government has actually done very little about getting people into work at all. I mean, there was a target that the government had in place when they came in, when Justin Tomlinson was Minister for Disabled People, about halving the disability employment gap. And when it realised that it wasn't going to stand up any hope of actually doing that, it just dropped the target. Now, if you're saying most disabled people want to work, 90% of them have at some point been in a job, and about 50% of them are in a job, because it's tremendously difficult to get work when you have a disability, and very little is being done to assist people to do that.
So, you know, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying there, James. And Francis, I want to go to you, but I want to bring in the voice of one more person, because there's someone who I think would agree with what James was just saying. I want you to have a look at what one potential voter to UK Prime Minister Theresa May during a campaign stop last week. Now, this has gone viral online, so I'm sure most of you have seen it. Here is Cathy Mohan. She says disability payment cuts have left her suffering. Those are her words. That's what she told The Guardian. Have a look.
Being serious, I want you to do something for us.
We've got a lot of plans for people with mental health,
and learning disabilities, because I've got mild learning disabilities, and I haven't got a carer at the moment, and I'm angry, and I would like somebody to help me, because I can't do everything I want to do. I'm talking about everybody, not just me. I'm talking about for everybody who's got mental, and anybody who's got learning disabilities. I want them not to have their money taken away from them and being crippled.
We're going to do a number of...
The fat cats keep the money, and us lot get nothing.
Cathy, we're going to do a number of things. Let me just tell you one thing, which isn't about money.
Do you know what I want? I want my disability living allowance to come back, not have PIPs and get nothing. I can't live on £100 a month. They took it all away from me.
What I can do is ensure that we're giving more help to people with mental health
and learning disabilities.
And that's exactly what we do.
I mean,
we
people in wheelchairs as well, and everybody. I'm not just myself, for all of us.
So, Eleanor, I want to bring you in here, and for our international audience, just a little descriptor. So the woman in the video you saw mentions personal independence payments, or PIPs. They've been controversial because they replaced a disability allowance that was in place before them. Eleanor, what are your thoughts on the confrontation, really, the things that she brought right to Theresa May's doorstep? What do you make of what she was saying?
Well, a lot of people have problems over what they call personal independence payment, which is PIP, because it's not only its payment that a lot of people depend on, because as the charity Scope say, it costs £550 more if you're a disabled person to live your life. The PIP is supposed to help you, to support you to live just as a non-disabled person would, to pay for the extra costs. However, the PIP is also a gateway towards a lot of other things like something called Motability, which helps disabled people to have vehicles to help them to do things like go to work, have a social life, do things that you would with a car. And without the PIP, they would take the car away. And for a lot of people, that means a loss of their job. And also, PIP can mean the difference between having an independent life, that is being able to access going out to do your shopping and all that, because it also supplements transport, because a lot of public transport is not accessible. It gives you things access to taxis and extra money for subsidizing the things that non-disabled people take for granted.
Right.
So that is why PIP is so pivotal to a lot of disabled people who are counting on it.
So I'd like to bring up the underlying suspicion here that people are frauding the system. And Rick, I wanted to show these headlines to you. So we have these here. This is common in the UK press. Con woman swindled £18,000 of disability benefits while working for the DWP. And then another headline here, Caribbean loving benefits cheat who claimed £150,000. So Rick, you see these kind of stories in the British press, especially in the tabloid media. What kind of effect do they have on how the public perceives disabilities and people with disabilities?
They have a very negative effect. I mean, just for the record, the actual level of fraud in the disability benefit system is 0.5%, which means it's 1 in every 200 people. So it's not a significant or systemic problem in the benefit system. So for the press to sort of concentrate on this, it's very dishonest, and it has absolutely led to an increase in disability hate crime. Just last year there was a 40% increase, and the government has cooperated and collaborated with certain parts of the tabloid media to create this negative impression of disability.
You know, I hear you on that point, but
Francis,
I want to bring you in, but I just want to remind our audience that some of these cuts, these disability cuts, took place first underneath the Labour government, and then of course then the coalition and Conservative government. But these are things that people have been facing for a while now. So Francis, I have this open here. This is a headline from The Guardian. This was on several different newspapers at the end of last year. UK austerity policies amount to violations of disabled people's rights. Now this was out of a UN report, an inquiry that took place that found some pretty grave findings, really, for people with disabilities in the UK. What's changed since this report, and what is the government doing to ensure that there are changes?
Well, normally when I read those reports from that UN committee, I'm incredibly impressed. They did a superb report on Zambia in Africa just the other week. But really, the underlying assumption from the 11 days that they spent in the UK was that the only way that you empowered disabled people to be more fully themselves was simply to pay them welfare payments from the government. Now we're spending £50 billion.
That's simply untrue. That is simply untrue.
If you look closely at that report, that's the underlying. I'm going to finish this sentence. That was the underlying assumption. And I think one of the things we need to crack open here, if the Crip the Vote campaign is to be successful, is it only going to be focused at those who need welfare payments, or is it also going to celebrate the disabled people that win golds at the Paralympics that were supported by government, those who become lawyers, those who become politicians, those who make a whole wider contribution as well?
This is such a trope. This is such a trope. There are
people.
Okay, so James and Rick, I hear you both. Rick, why don't you go first, and then we'll hear from James.
Well, for the UN investigation, it took 400 witness statements. The investigation took over 2 years, and it was very thorough, and it's based on the United Nations rights on the people with disabilities. It did include social care. It did include all the other aspects: inclusion, independent living. It isn't simply about money from the government, although you do have to face the fact that if you are going to affect the lives of a demographic that is has an overabundance of poverty in it, which is disabled. Disabled people are more prey to poverty. You do have to deal with that in a very direct way at times, and that will involve supporting people to live independently in their own homes, and for that to be paid for by government, which is perplexing because the first thing the government did when it took power was to close the Independent Living Fund.
James?
Well,
yeah, you hear a lot, oh, why aren't we celebrating our Paralympians and you're just after money from the government? This is not the case. As I keep on banging on in print about the disability employment gap, which is the difference between able-bodied employment and disabled employment. And it is large and it is substantial, and nothing really very much is being done to address it. They hold the occasional fair and seminars with employers. But in terms of, the government has massive purchasing power. It uses a huge range of different companies to do a huge range of functions. It could influence them. It could audit their hiring of disabled people. It does none of that. Disabled people, as a rule, want to get up and about and do as much as they possibly can. And you're saying that it's just about getting money from them is frankly quite insulting. What it is disabled people want to be allowed to be at a level where they can do the maximum they can do, and what the government policy is doing at the moment is stopping them from doing that, and that is disgraceful,
right.
Frankly.
Right. So to bring it back to the Quit the Vote campaign, just the topic of the show is the campaign itself.
Yeah.
So Eleanor, I want to play this video comment we got from the person who I originally played a video comment from. Listen again to Candace in the UK talk about voting. Take a listen.
I'm voting for the first time in the UK this election. I'm 35 years old. I've never voted before. I've also never felt before the chance for real political change like I do now. I'm a part of a disabled family. They've taken everything, and they're penalising millions of families, those who cannot defend themselves. I urge everyone to vote. Do your research, come to your own conclusions, but please vote.
So Eleanor, you heard she's never voted before. She's 35 years old. She's voting for the first time, and this is the issue she's voting on. Do you think we're going to see a new bloc emerge out of this election?
I don't know. I really hope so. I really hope that they're going to wake up to what they might be losing if we have another 5 years of the same government. Now, Quit the Vote UK, we are non-partisan. We will not tell you who to vote. We will just say, look at the facts, decide for yourself. And I'm just hoping that there will be a new galvanization of disabled people that realizes, the whole thing about repealing our rights. And I'm not going to bring Brexit in, but that is really a huge part of it as well. That's also, apart from the social welfare, now that's something that we need to be careful about. That is that we might be losing the rights from that, from leaving the EU. But I don't think we have time to go into that. And also, if I can bring back the earlier on, I think it was James who talked about access, who talked about work. And nobody has mentioned the fact that this government has cut access to work in spite of the fact that it has been shown that access to work is a support that disabled people can get to help them work. That they have been cutting this and putting a cap on the kind of support that you can get. And I know this has also a great effect on disabled people, not just on disabled people, but disabled people's organizations, which have deaf people, for example.
Right.
Deaf people has increased and has a great need.
And Eleanor, on that point, I'm going to pause you because those are all things that I know that our other guests are going to want to talk about, and we have time to do that in the post show. So join us. Stream.aljazeera.com. We're taking all of our guests, including interpreter Naomi Bottrill from Love Language Ltd, to the post show where we'll continue this conversation on the campaign called Quit the Vote UK. We'll see you there online. Welcome back. We're in the post show. We've been discussing the rights of the disabled in the United Kingdom. Let's get right back to that discussion. Just as we were heading over into the post show, I had to cut you off there, Eleanor. Can you sum up your point for us?
Now, I was just talking about something called access to work, which is a great support for people who are in work in the United Kingdom. For example, myself, I'm self-employed. Access to work gives me support workers to help me work. Now, for a lot of people, access to work has been cut, and they have been cut sometimes without being told, and so they have this great shortfall in their funding to pay their workers, and this particularly affects people who are deaf, who need British Sign Language interpreters, because without those, they cannot work, obviously. And for example, myself, my local disabled people's organizations, the chief executive happens to be deaf. Because she has a cap on her support, it affects the work that she can do for the disabled people in the community. And therefore, this is a sort of trickle-down cuts that people don't always talk about. It's a cut. It is the cuts that affect everybody who are disabled.
Right.
And
so Eleanor, on that point,
I
do want to note, and of course this is available online for everyone to see, but this is the Conservative Party's manifesto. The first line: we will get 1 million more people with disabilities into employment over the next 10 years. So it is something that the government says they will focus on. Francis, I want to bring you back in here. How will this happen? What is the outline for that to happen? And is the fact that you are in place as someone who is uniquely tied to the community of people with disabilities, you're a carer for someone with a disability. Do you think you're in a unique position to be able to affect that change?
Well, I can't speak for the Conservative Party, but yeah, so I have lived experience of disability, and I think the space to start is exactly where James left off on the TV programme, which is when government goes to procure anything, there ought to be monitoring of how much they invest in creation of disabled people's jobs. Government startup funds at the moment, there is a target around how much money has to go to black people. There isn't one around potential disabled entrepreneurs or self-employed people like the woman that's on the show tonight. And I think we need to get hold of that money and reorient it, even if, for example, in the Department of Work and Pensions, they bought their soap from a business owned and run by disabled people, they'd be able to create more jobs than they get from giving a grant to the charity that they currently give money to make soap, to create jobs for disabled people in a part of North London. So there's lots to be done on procurement. There's a huge amount to be done on mental health, and I welcome in all the manifestos the new focus on mental health, and especially there in severe conditions, because high-end counselling won't empower anybody. But I think the biggest thing, it has to come from employers, and we need to really push employers to shift their approach to taking people on, because government can't do anything. Every major corporate ought to have its own internal target for taking disabled people on, whether that's provided by law or not.
Right.
Well, on this, I do agree with Francis, is that the government has to make interventions in the labour market. That's where you have to start. If you want to get disabled people into work, you affect the labour market. You don't take away their means of support. The government has gone about it completely wrongly.
Right. I think we're finding, for the first time since the show's been on, we're actually agreeing. I think
a breakthrough. We have reached a breakthrough then.
Yeah, there is some agreement here. I think an intervention in the labour market, though, I would absolutely agree with that. There does need to be an intervention in the labour market. The government has fought shy of doing that. It doesn't do enough with procurement, and even when it comes down to, as I say, contractors, monitor them. Make them submit returns on how many disabled people they employ, on the percentage of disabled workers they have. If you start doing that, you will start making a change. If you start seeing more disabled people in the workplace, you will normalize it. And that's
exactly.
But you actually need the intervention first. You need to actually take the action and say, this is what we expect.
We have an act in Britain called the Social Value Act, which has not been used by any central government department, which allows the department to put social criteria into its procurement. When Network Rail, which is one of our rail supporting companies, used that act recently, they ended up allocating the manufacture of all of their signs across the country to a social enterprise owned and run by disabled veterans. Likewise, when the Department of Transport applied that act, they ended up buying all the signage for all of our motorways from that same social venture. So the legislation is there, and Crip the Vote and others need to focus in creating the pressure so that no department can get away with not using that legislation that's in place to get their money shifted in the right direction.
Well, from your lips to the ears of everyone who is watching, I pulled up here on my screen the Crip the Vote campaign. That is the hashtag that organizers are using. And of course, it started with the campaign here in the US, and the stream covered that as well right before elections. Dan, I know that people online are excited about this election because they feel that there is a power there to amass some sort of voting block.
Exactly, and they're tweeting us ways that they're going to access the polls. So you can see here on my computer, Scott tweeted us, there is the option of postal voting, and there are free transport services available for disabled and elderly people on election day. So just a PSA from the stream.
We're going to have to end our conversation there, but thank you, Dan, and thanks to our community, and of course to our guests and interpreter. And until next time, we'll see you all online.